Hi, I'm Tara Kelly, instructor of English at the University of North Florida. In this training video, I will be discussing how we do the peer review conversations online in 1101 and 1143. Think about peer review for just a minute. What is it? What are your past experiences doing it? How does it make you feel? What are your expectations? And what are your fears? Oftentimes, students do fear peer review, or they come to peer review with expectations that it is something that you do silently, that you have a form that guides you. As you fill out the form, you give suggestions to the writer. Some people confuse revision and editing, and so sometimes we think that we are changing sentences or grammar, and in peer review, we're not doing that at all. In peer review, we should be making suggestions to help the writer to make the message more clear, and that could mean that we are suggesting to remove information, add information, move information around, make information more clear. And peer review is the process by which we give those suggestions. In online peer review, we post our papers online, and then we peer review each other in that format. You want to have as many people read your writing as possible to help guide those revisions. The more eyes on your paper, the more suggestions you can get. Papers should be revised in order to help you meet the assignment guidelines. Peer review should happen multiple times in the paper cycle, and in this environment, we want to post at least 2 drafts and have those 2 drafts revised and reviewed. Your classroom peers are the most important peer reviewers because they know the rubrics that we use here at UNF and they know the assignments. The peer review conversation is what we call the online discussion of your peer's paper. You work within a peer review group that you have been put in your online class. This peer review group remains the same for the entire semester. All rough drafts for the PRC are posted online in your group wiki. You have generally 72 hours to complete the peer review conversation after you post your first rough draft. You can continue to peer review the second rough draft on your own timeline, but we do enforce a timeline for the first rough draft. The peer review conversation begins after the writer posts their rough draft and self-review. That self-review is just a start of the conversation. If I'm the writer, I would post my rough draft and then I would post my first comment. And in that comment, I would say, this is what I've done well, and this is where I need help in this paper. That self-review is really important to help guide the conversation, and so that you as the writer, you get the types of comments that you want right off the bat. During the time of the peer review conversation, you should read the essays of your group members, comment on the essay with your initial thoughts and questions, come back to the conversation a few times and add additional thoughts and comments. Think of this as any online conversation, a thread that is ongoing. Go to the conversation on your own paper as well and answer questions of your peers and ask for more advice on your paper as you need it. After the peer review conversation time ends, the writer should post a reflection and revision plan. That is, you're going to go back and say, this is what I have learned from my peers' comments, and this is what I'm going to do to revise for my second rough draft. And then after the second rough draft, you'll come back again and say what you're going to revise to make that paper a final draft that you will submit to your instructor. And then you should, in between all of these drafts, you should be revising and making significant changes to your drafts. As you are commenting as a peer reviewer, you can give praise. Always start with something nice. It's really helpful to know what you've done well in a paper, what's going well, because you can repeat those good practices that you already have. Ask for clarification. Reflect on the thesis and the topic sentences within that person's paper. Make sure that everything flows from beginning to end and that everything connects back to that thesis statement. You might want to suggest revisions and be very specific in those suggestions. Refer to the assignment sheet, the announcements, and the videos. It's important to refer back to the tools that we have in the classroom and remind the writer, remind your peer where to find the information on the assignment. And then make connections to other papers written by group members. You can do that in order to say, well, you know, you don't have a thesis statement in your summary. However, Samantha does. Why don't you go back to Samantha's paper and read her first sentence? Maybe that would be a good model for you. If you refer to each other's works, then you're using each other's works as models that are already there within the course. Now I'm going to give you 4 sample comments and talk about why these comments are working. The first one, "Hi Sarah, you wrote so many discourse elements in your paper. When I read closely, I can find support for your thesis. But did you know that you don't have to discuss every element of discourse analysis? It would be great if you just focused on a few points of analysis and give the reader more about the details on those points." This particular comment is commenting on a paper's focus. If you notice, it's not fully grammatically correct, but the comment is understandable. It's okay to have a few errors in the comments that you give. The point here is that you want to give a comment that says this is what you're doing well, this is where your paper is having some trouble, and this is exactly how you can fix that. Sample comment 2 shows us how there is a conversation between 2 peers within the peer review conversation. You are not just going in and giving a comment that's out of nowhere, that doesn't connect to the other comments that are already being given. So here's the first student. "Also, I don't think your paper has a clear thesis to draw audience's attention to your main point. For example, Joanne's thesis statement discusses the speaker's doubt about whether she can keep her accent or if people will judge her, and she points to the appeals the speaker uses. It's very clear and leads audiences to think deeply about appeals. For example, you can explain how the speaker discusses how her experiences lead to her view on the single story. This way you can make your paper more focused and it will flow more smoothly." The second student comes in and says, "I agree with my peer. I can see that all of the details would be interesting to explain more, but none of them are fully explained. So pick the most important ones. You can think about choosing just the elements that explain your thesis and use details from the speech to expand on those elements." So both of these peers are referring back to the assignment sheet and saying in the assignment sheet it says that we don't focus on everything, that we pick some discourse elements and focus on something that gives us a clear thesis to draw a clear conclusion. And both of these peers have noticed that this paper is lacking that focus, and so they're making suggestions on how to fix that. In the sample comment 3, the peer reviewer is asking for clarification. Here's the example. "Hi Joe, from your summary I understand that G discusses big D discourse, but why does he discuss that? My understanding was that he says regular discourse analysis lacked in a few ways. Is that right? Do you think that you should add to your summary?" So here the person is saying, I see that there's something missing. Here is what I think you could say, and then I'm asking you as the peer if you had the same understanding I did. And in these comments, we can actually, especially the ones for summaries, we can negotiate meaning in the text. We can use the peer reviews to also think about what does the text mean? What did the author mean when he or she said this? And in our final comment, this peer reviewer discusses what is missing and then points specifically to the assignment sheet. Remember that we could always go back to the tools that we have, the assignment sheet, announcements, videos, etc. This comment says, "Nice job, Lisa. You present so much support in your analysis. But what is the main conclusion you draw from this analysis? Remember, the assignment sheet says that you need to include whether or not you think the person had the right to respond in this conversation about this issue. From what I know about this issue, I think the singer of this song was so removed from the discourse community that he doesn't have any credibility on the issue. Do you agree?" So here, again, this person is saying, you're missing a conclusion. The assignment sheet says that we should have this, and then here is one that I think that you could use to help guide you. So it's giving a very clear suggestion for revision. All 4 of these comments were taken from actual conversations done by students, and you can see that students are able to give very substantial comments to each other, and I hope that this helps you get started on your peer review conversations. Have fun.